Hello, thanks for stopping by. In this video, I'm making 3 shaker cards using these tiny stamps from Mama Elephant. So to get started, I have a bunch of cardstock panels pre-cut. I have 6 in total because I'm going to be making 3 cards. And the first thing I'm going to do is cut out the top panel. So this is going to create our windows. So I'll cut out 3 of these, one for each of our cards. And then on our remaining panels, I'm going to use the cutout to create, so I know what the layout is for where I'm going to place all these tiny stamps. So I drew those circles on, and now I am laying out the ghost stamps for the first card, and I'm stamping those, and I stamp it a few times. And then I go ahead and erase some of my circles so that I can Copic color over them and not have to worry about that pencil line getting trapped underneath. I'm using light gray here on the ghosts since the ghosts are white or clear, so they don't have a lot of color to them. So they're just using a little bit of light gray to create some shadows in different places to give them a little bit more dimension than just sort of flat little ghosties. And then I picked a sort of purple, green, and orange color palette for all of the accessories of the different ghosts. So we've got a little hat, a little bow, a little pumpkin, and a little candy. And so I'm going to be using those colors for all the accent pieces, but then for the backgrounds as well. And using the pencil line and the cutout, I'm going to sort of create color backgrounds behind each of the ghosts and then behind the windows that don't have any ghosts on them. And those windows are going to have the shaker bits. So I'm just coloring with my Copic markers the same color palette that I used to color the different tiny images, the little accents to the ghost. I'm using the same colors for the backgrounds. And yeah, just using that guide to make sure I color in all the space. It's actually a little bit harder than it looks, and I'm cutting a lot of this out, but I definitely keep placing the guide over just to make sure I'm getting all of the window, the background window covered. So jumping ahead a bit, just finishing up some of these windows, you'll notice that I used orange for the windows that don't have any little ghosts, and that is because I'm trying to match the shaker bits that I'm planning to use, which are mostly orange. And I got this idea for these shaker cards and tiny windows from Kristina Werner, so I'll go ahead and link the ghost video that sort of inspired this card in the upper corner. And then now that I finished coloring, I'm going to use our window to set up my sentiment, which is going to go in one of those remaining empty circles. And I like to do this after I color because I have a tendency to smear my ink. So I like to do it after I've finished coloring so I don't accidentally smear it in the process of coloring. And now I'm adding some foam tape to the back of the die cut window. I did mess up here. I forgot to add acetate. So you'll see how I sort of get around that so I don't have to waste this piece of foam tape and cutouts. But so what I ended up doing was I adhered that to my card panel that was colored, and then I just cut out another window front with all those tiny circles, and I added the acetate to that and went ahead and let that dry. This actually is a great way, if you have a tendency like me to get your shaker bits everywhere, this is a great way to just add the shaker bits directly into the windows without having to worry about them flying everywhere in the process. So this is actually perhaps an easier way to do that. And you'll notice that I didn't do this for the remaining cards, and it was tricky with the shaker bits. This shaker bit set is, I believe it's called Candy Corn, and it's from Trinity Stamps. So it's mostly oranges and yellows and whites. And so I think that blended nicely with those different orange backgrounds. Now I'm adding some glue to that panel, and I will just adhere the second panel with the acetate on top of that. And that will form sort of the shaker window. I added it to a card base, and this is our final card for the little ghosties. And I like this so much, I wanted to make another card. So now I'm transitioning holidays from Halloween to Christmas or winter holidays. And I'm doing the same thing, circling these openings to create a layout. And then I'm using the tiny penguin stamp set to stamp the little images in those circles. And my camera gets a little shaky here. Sorry about that. I'm adding lots of ink to make sure that they're stamped really well, and I often stamp it up 3 or 4 times just to make sure they're really good solid images to color. And I'm going to be using 2 darker grays to sort of form the black tuxedo part of the penguin. So just 2 different shades of really dark gray. This card was inspired by Kristina Werner, so I'll go ahead and link her video in the top corner. And then I'm coloring a bunch of the noses and stuff with orange and the feet in orange, and then I'm using a lighter gray to sort of provide some shadow on that white part. And then there are some various accents, so I'm having some brown accents and some red and green accents, and then the backgrounds of the penguins and the shaker windows are going to be different shades of red and green. And that lines up nicely with our window. And this time I'm doing it correctly and adding the acetate first before adding the foam tape to the window cutout. And now I'm adding those shaker bits. I'm creating little wells for each of the windows, and then just cutting it to trim it down to make it all fit. And then this is called Classic Christmas, so I'm adding those to the shaker well. Off screen, I went ahead and stamped and embossed a sentiment, which I didn't show here, but I'm just adding these to all the windows that don't have little penguins in them. And I'm using the color guide that you can sort of see off the edge there as a way to determine which wells to put the shaker bits in. And I'm using my Misty tool this time to help line up the colored panel with the window. And I'll add that to a card base with some double-sided adhesive. And I'll add that to my card panel. And now I have my penguin shaker with the sentiment Jingle Bell Rocks. And for my last card, I decided to do it a little bit differently. So instead of drawing the circles, I'm actually using the cutout as a guide. I'm making sure to remove that before I go ahead and stamp my sentiments. But I laid that over, put on my little snowman stamps, and then removed the cutout, and I'm now stamping the little snowman. Just making sure to get lots of ink coverage, and again, I stamped it times. And so this color palette is going to be mostly like blues and light purples. So I'm using a light blue to sort of add shadow to the little snowmen because they're white images mostly, and different blues and pinks and just sort of random colors. But the background colors will be various shades of blue and light purple. And I did this because what I did was I actually chose my shaker bits first, and then I selected my color palette so I knew exactly what colors would look good with those shaker bits. So because I didn't draw the lines on this example, I have to place the front panel guide a little bit more frequently to make sure I'm getting those background colors fully colored. Adding my sentiment, snowflake wishes, and now I am adhering the acetate sheet to the back of the cutout window. I'm gonna let that dry. Adding my foam tape, creating those wells again, the same process as before. and adding the little shaker bits to the windows using the colored guide to figure out which wells to put the shaker bits in. And this set is called Snow Day, I believe, also from Trinity Stamps. And now I'm using my score tool to line up my panel with the shaker bit window panel. Making sure that's adhered well. And then I flipped it over and realized that I had accidentally put not enough shaker bits in one of the windows. So here I'm attempting to form a little bit of card surgery and open that shaker window back up, and I'm trying to just slowly put a bunch of tiny more shaker bits into that window just to make it a little bit fuller. Luckily this one was on the edge, so it wasn't too difficult. And then I went ahead and adhered that to a card panel, and this is the final Snowflake Wishes card featuring the little snowman. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found some inspiration to make your own little stamp image shaker cards.